So, welcome to part two of my 2016 South Korea blog. In this portion, I'll be conducting independent field studies, mostly in Seoul, for 4 days, but with one day trip right out here to Gangwon Island, which is in the Incheon area, and will bring me very, very close to North Korea. Along with the things I've already put out there for the Korea Society and the Academy of Korean Studies, and I really can't thank those folks enough. I'd also like to give thanks to the Modesto Junior College Foundation, and particularly Dr. George Bedrukis and Dorinda Pendergrass. The MJC Foundation was extremely helpful in finding some financial support to strengthen the teaching of cultural diversity at MJC, to fund a portion of my field studies, and I really appreciate the support from all three institutions. It really makes doing my job a joy when other people are seeing the value in my doing research to better instruction in the classroom. On day one, having moved to Itaewon, which was a kind of trendier, more international portion of Seoul, we had a quick trip to the Liam Samsung Museum. I knew that when Sarah came in, she was going to be tired, and so I wanted to make it so that our first thing was in walkable distance, and of course, then it would be possible to get back to the hotel if she had the same kind of sleeping difficulties that I did when I arrived. But nope, straight into perfect sleeping rhythm. I was so jealous. It was fantastic. On the upper left is an image of the Samsung Museum, and it's really hard to tell here, but it is on a hill, so there are several stories, sort of floors, that follow the lie of that hill. Below that is an image, and in this point we're in this portion this is the sort of ancient to Renaissance collection, and then this is the modern portion on this side. We're in that ancient portion, and we are sort of going down floors in a circle. You can see that on the right, that the stairs follow down, dropping you off at various floors. It's a really incredible space with a lot of numbered Korean treasures. Korea has a registry of its most important national treasures, and this is just a world-class institution. I can't recommend it enough. Unfortunately, they don't allow much photography, so I don't have a lot of evidence for you, with the exception of this wonderful frontispiece of a sutra from the Goryeo dynasty that would make it about 14th century, sort of mid 14th century. And this particular piece is painted on a blue paper in gold, gold being, of course, symbolic for the enlightenment and the merit that come from the creation of the book. On our second day, we headed out to Gungwa Island. And as I mentioned, it's kind of a long trip, but it's in the sort of nearby region of Incheon. That meant driving 2 hours to get to our first site, which was a viewing platform in which you could see farmers working in the field in villages in North Korea. The river at that point is only about 2 kilometers wide, so it's as close as you can get without going to the DMZ. And I didn't really kind of want to do that. And what you're looking at in that image to the lower left is an offering platform that's been put there for families who have been separated from their ancestral homeland so that they can still conduct rites and rituals in the absence of being able to get back to their traditional spaces. To the right is a very simple lunch, and it was nice after having been hosted by such in such a wonderful fashion with wonderful hospitality. It was nice to go a little bit the opposite way and do something that was more of a small village meal. In the upper portion, you're looking at a bibimbap, which is a Korean rice dish in a sizzling bowl. And what's in front of me in the lower portion is a tofu in miso and chili paste soup that one of my hosts referred to as everyday soup. And indeed, it's a delicious soup that is often served kind of a comfort food. Um, but our main objective on that day was to get to Dolmen Park. And Dolmen Park has this absolutely incredible megalith. It's not Neolithic, it's actually from the Bronze Age. These were grave sites that were created in a fashion that's very similar to what we see in Neolithic Europe, just at a different time. And then there aren't very many of these in Asia. There's about 70 in and around Gongwa, and that's the majority of these megaliths in Asia. So I really wanted to get a look at it. And if I stooped just a little, I could walk under this. So it's a very large set of stones. The next day it was raining like crazy. So it was a good thing that we had decided that it was going to be the day that we visited the National Museum in Seoul. And this is another world-class institution, just a fantastic museum. You can see it's pretty rainy there on the left, very modernist exterior. And when you get in on the right there, this is in the main building, which is over here, though there are also galleries on this side. When you get into the main building, you can see that this is a really just humongous space. There are three wings, sort of a top, a middle, and a bottom on each side, that are darn near a city block long. They're really, really incredible show spaces. And we were only really able to cover the permanent collection. With minus the East Asian collection that wasn't Korean, and some temporary exhibitions that they had in there. It took all day, and it was just a really fantastic collection. Very, very in-depth and accessible, especially on the bottom floor, to children. And as you can see from this photo, there were children all over the place. Kids are encouraged to get out as classes and visit historic sites and museums on a regular basis, and that was a big feature of this trip. Seeing kids regularly in ways that maybe we don't do as often here. At the very end of the hallway here, you can see a 10-story pagoda that actually refers to the number of stories, not actually that it's 10-story high. You can see that it's actually technically, though, 2-story high. So it gives you, in terms of building, so it gives you an idea of how incredibly large this space is. So the highlights for me in this collection come from the ancient portion of the collection. And what you see on the left is a crown and a girdle from the Three Kingdoms period. It is Shilla dynasty, but before the unification, and that would be 4th century CE. And it's incredibly thin and elegant gold with various things attached. Just a beautiful, beautiful piece. On the right, for those of you who have been in my Asian art classes, you know that I have a real thing for the pensive prince pose, and this is one of the most famous pensive bodhisattvas. This is from the unified Shilla period, and that is early 7th century, almost life size. Really gorgeous, gorgeous piece. Um, One thing that this museum also does that from a sort of earlier time frame is give you an idea of how much of a printing culture Korea had been. A lot of people don't know that the first movable type was actually in Asia, using Chinese characters, starting with ceramic and wood. And then the first known metal movable type is from the 14th century, and that's the piece you're looking at in the upper left. So that's over 100 years before we have metal movable type, which is claimed to have been invented in the West. That's 100 years before that or more. Unfortunately, with Chinese characters, this is just not a very viable method for printing long term. You have to move an awful lot around. And eventually, Korea would have come up with the goods on this, in that a Korean king invented a phonetic and pictographic system for writing in Korean that's called Hangul. You're looking at a tray of Hangul print below. That's after the invention of the Gutenberg press, so I'm not claiming that this came around before. But this it is pictographic in that the various characters actually depict the tongue and the mouth and the throat and the kind of shapes that they make when you make the various sounds. And it's also phonetic because it is standing in for the sounds that are being made. In the upper right is a printed book, and Korea is very much a printing culture, both in terms of images and in terms of books. But the thing that most people know, if they don't know a lot about Korean art, is about Korean celadon, which is a gorgeous ceramic technique, and this museum also does a great job of showcasing that traditional art. So on the left, you start to see how great celadon has become, just, absolutely gorgeous, really, really intensive stuff. On the right, you can see that inlays start being added, and those inlays come up to multiple colors, very, very smooth, very beautiful. And then that develops into buncheong ware and eventually white porcelain. So I learned a tremendous amount between the Liam Samsung and the National Museum about the transitions and tradition of Korean ceramics. It was a far more robust tradition than the small portions of textbooks would have led me to believe. And we finished off the day because it was a long day on your feet. We finished off the day in style and went to a place that did a little bit of a modern Korean type of cuisine. You can see the banchan, the little dishes on the left. This included duck eggs in the upper left, and then to the right are the things that we'd ordered. It's a white turnip and abalone in the upper left. Below that, a marinated cold beef and egg dish. Korean sushi rice balls in the middle, which are really fantastic, and then a variation on the Korean pancake in the far right, in which that pancake batter is around beef and then rolled with greens in the middle, and they were kind of spicy to the taste. It was really very nice. Just a word on this fourth day when we sort of take to the street and see a lot of sights and start using the subway. A word about the subways in both Seoul and Busan is sort of in order. These are incredibly clean and efficient systems. On the left is the look of the subway, and it's actually glassed in with doors that open like you're using the tram in an international airport. Absolutely safe, and as you can see, immaculate as well. And on the right is how you get to those subways. You take sort of these stairways down from the street, and there are these massive underground malls. And what I mean by massive is you can actually walk between subway stops in many of these malls for large portions of the city. It was really incredible to me how much subterranean shopping and food there was. And again, very, very clean, very safe. So on this last day in Seoul, we took advantage of a combination ticket, which for about 10 American dollars allows you into the four palaces that remain in Seoul and the Jongmo Shrine. And you're looking right here at the Jongmo Shrine. This is a site where the Joseon Dynasty, and these are all Joseon dynasty sites, they made their offerings to their ancestors, which was, of course, important to the state. The Joseon dynasty are actually the folks who moved the capital to Seoul, so that's the tradition that we're looking at over the next few palaces. And I think I'm going to just call them Palace 1 through 4 to keep this kind of quick and easy instead of getting bogged down in the history of each, and just go in the order that we saw them. The first palace that we saw was the most authentic. It actually had not been reburned since the late 1500s, so it's buildings from the 1600s, and it gave you a really good idea of what the paint looked like, what the wood looked like from this very early time frame. And we're standing here at the entrance. Oftentimes at sacred or really important sites, you want to have the crossing of water, or even if it's just symbolic. And then this main road leading in is actually going to bring you up a middle axial line that's going to lead you to the palaces behind. And the middle path, which I'm sort of holding the camera over, is for spirits only. So I tried not to walk on said path. The second palace was a palace that was used. It was actually connected to the first at one point, but had become split in more modern times and had been used to see foreign dignitaries. And it's a really impressive sight. You can see that. People, in terms of their rank from 1 to 9 here, would line up in front of the king when he gave audiences. And I just wanted to show you this guy standing on this middle path, which you're not supposed to do, viewing palaces and other historic sites the way that people do in Korea or anywhere in the West, backwards, taking selfies in front of it. So he's not even looking at the thing. And he's doing the wrong thing. But it's a gorgeous palace. And we got a chance to see some really amazing interiors. And this is actually from the first palace on the left here. You can see that beautiful old paint and wood. I don't believe that the screen is from the same age, but you can really see how some of that paint now has started to come off of the wood on the top. Some of that red has really started to fade. On the right is what we treated ourselves to for lunch. We tromped around quite a bit to get we're near Palace number 3 at this point, and it's been a long walking day. So we sat down with what turned out to be one of my favorite dishes in Korea, ginseng chicken soup. And so in ginseng chicken soup, you have a beautiful, clean, ginseng flavored broth, and you're served a small chicken. It's an entire chicken in this soup. It comes to you just boiling, literally boiling up and bubbling. And that chicken is stuffed with sticky rice and then things like chestnuts, also water chestnuts. There's pine seeds in this soup, and then there's, of course, ginseng in there as well. It is a beautiful flavor. And even in the middle of summer, I was told Koreans try and eat this every 10 days because it's a soup that's thought to keep your strength up. And I can absolutely believe that. The regular ginseng chicken is the one at the top. The one at the bottom is not marinated in anything. I decided to order a particular type of chicken that actually is all black, all the way down from its flesh to its bones. It's just born that way. And it had a very subtly different flavor. I'm not sure it was worth the money, but it was definitely worth the experience. Palace number 3 was the sort of main palace. And I showed you a picture of this already in the last with Dr. Peterson lecturing in front of it. And I just wanted to take this image to point out that in Korean drama right now, period pieces are really big, and those Korean period pieces have international audiences, and Korean kids are into it. So this is actually a group of kids who are dressed up in traditional dress, and coming in traditional dress actually gets you into the historic sites for free. Kind of a twofer. You get kids in, they see the site, but also they add to the atmosphere by bringing in traditional dress. It was really pretty darn cool. This is a screen that's actually from the Queen's Palace in the very, very back of Palace number 3. And I just wanted to put it out there for all of the people who sat with me through any of my runs at the Survey of Asian Art. This is a screen that depicts the 10 symbols that bring a long life. It includes things like turtles and deer and peaches, which you might already know about, and mushrooms. And it's just a really, really fun piece, but it's also a little utilitarian. You do want people to have that long life. Palace number 4 is a little bit of a sad story. So this comes at a time when there's a lot of sort of it becomes a palace at a time when the king has to leave for a period of time and then comes back while other palaces are being reburnt after the Japanese invasion. So it becomes a minor palace. And then, unfortunately, in the early 1900s, when there is war between the various sides of Russia and China and Japan, it becomes a place that becomes the only palace that the king can inhabit when the Japanese are occupying. And while that king was in Russia seeking asylum, he declared the only Korean empire. And so this is also the Korean Imperial Palace, and it's the place where Korean rule by Koreans will end as well with the death of the last king there. And during that imperial period, you can see there are now neoclassical palaces added with the old traditional structures. It's the only one of the three palaces that includes those, and that's of course because at that point, that's the way that the self-proclaimed emperor wants to show that he has that same sort of influence and affluence. From It's a totally different look at the traditional down through a European style axial garden back at that traditional. And in the back of this photo right there, we can actually see the modern city hall. So it's a real look at the history of the Joseon dynasty and modern Seoul as well. I really like the statement of the new city hall. This is the original city hall down here, and that was built by the Japanese. There's some resentment, of course, still from that occupation period. That's 1910 to the end of World War II. And so when Seoul has a giant boom and wants to make a statement about where it is in the world and how it feels about, maybe about some of its past, and putting that behind it. They built a new city hall, which is a wave that is coming over the old city hall built during the occupied period. It's a really kind of beautiful postmodern programmatic piece of architecture that I thought was very elegant, a very smart way to make that statement. And we really kind of finished earlier than I thought. So we got on the subway and went out to Gangnam. So I have lived a little Gangnam style at this point. But we didn't hit clubs. Instead, we hit the Royal Joseon tombs. You can see that this is actually a tumulus. It was hard to get this picture because the sun's just behind this building. You can see it's a tomb mound with a little tumulus on top. So that's what the image to the right is. It's going to echo shapes that you're going to see in my next podcast that are the ancient tumuli. Our last site of the day was a really sort of wonderful spot to see the modern marvel that is the Miracle on the Han, this revival of Seoul, and now this incredible building and just amazing business that's going on right next to a traditional temple. This is the Boengsa Temple, and in the middle of Seoul, in Gangnam, you can stand in a sort of traditional, quiet Buddhist space and see skyscrapers off in the distance. It's an amazing place. I really want to highly recommend it to everyone. Very friendly and extremely easy to get around in English if you don't know much Korean, when we didn't know any. So in the third and final installment, we'll get on the bullet train and head on down to Busan.